Hey guys, I'm Lee Taylor. That's the brand new GR Yaris Rallye, and this is a Right Lane review.
Homologation Special. Now that may seem like an overly technical term that car aficionados throw around classics and reminisce about a bygone era, but it's a sacred term prized only for the special limited run Golden Geese. It's a special FIA requirement, and World Rallies saw the legendary Group Bs, sports cars saw the 911 GT1 and CLK GTR, and now Toyota has this, the GR Yaris. Since 1987, Toyota has been involved in WRC in various forms and with legendary names, even enduring their own notorious controversies and dramas, but for 2021 they wanted something new, something to keep up the good fight.
So the GR Yaris only exists so that a GR WRC race car can exist. But Toyota's not actually using that car this year. In WRC, they decided to stick with the old one. But fortunately for us, they still gave us a series production car. And you think about what the Yaris would compete against, you have cars like the Fiesta ST, which are same size and two-wheel drive, but then you have the WRX, which is all-wheel drive as well, but not quite as unique. So this car really kind of occupies a space of its own. And a car as special as this is really best enjoyed if you play a little dirty. So how's the Yaris once you get it out on the road and start enjoying it a bit? Well, I'll talk more about the dynamics of the car in a bit, but from a day-to-day living perspective, when you're living in the city and driving around town, it feels pretty typical sport hatchback, and I want to give it a pretty high praise. It reminds me a lot of my RS 265 Trophy. What I mean by that is that while it's easy to drive around town, it's got the hatchback body, easy to park it, not that great to see out of, but it's a good size. And if you're not egging it on, or if it's not in sport or track mode, it's a pretty compliant little hatchback. And there's this feeling through the steering and the suspension and the gearbox and even in the little 3-cylinder engine that kind of tells you that it's a bit more than what you expect. Like, it's not your typical hatchback. There's something special about it, but it doesn't scream at you about it. Now, if you put it in sport or track mode, it becomes a bit touchier, but it's still not anything near what I would call rampant or rampaging. And that's interesting because when you first get the car, at least when I first was driving the car and I chucked it into an on-ramp and onto a roundabout, I was like, wow, this actually reminds me a lot of my Megane. I can tell that there's something here, but I'm not going to be able to feel that on the road, at least not on city streets. I'm either take it out to the mountain or take it onto a circuit to get into that nitty-gritty. And so it hasn't felt that special in a day-to-day life, but I reckon it will be once it's up in the mountains. So let's talk about the technicals for a bit. So what makes the Rallye a bit more special than the normal GR Yaris? It's the same 1.6 3-cylinder out front, turbocharged, 200 kilowatts, 250 newton meters of torque, so it's a pretty strong engine. This car makes more power than my Megane RS 265 did, and it's all-wheel drive as well. And the all-wheel drive system is variable front to rear. Normal mode, it sits around 60% front and 40% rear. You put it in sport, it shucks 70% out back, and you put it in track and it keeps it 50-50. Now, it does have in this Rallye model Torsen limited slip differentials on the front and the rear axle. Now what that means is it senses how much torque is being sent to that differential and then applies it accordingly. Now it's not what we call vectoring. It can't actively vector side to side depending on steering input and all of that. So it's nothing super fancy, but it makes a big difference in how the car grips and feels, and you can actually feel it working, particularly in the wet. If you go around a roundabout, give it a little bit of throttle, you can feel the front end kind of shuffling, the back end shuffling to get itself right. And that's a good system. That's another thing that really affected its sense of feeling that my RS 265 had, because the 265 has a very similar differential setup up front. Now, overall, the package is pretty good. And if you're driving it day to day, it's sprightly, it's plenty of power that anyone will ever need. You have a heads-up display, shows you most everything you need, but my biggest gripe with this car from a day-to-day perspective is the visibility out of it. This coupe body is really small. You don't have to worry about placing it because of its size, but you can't really see very well. You get this window right in front of you, and that's really all you have, because you look slightly to the left, You get the rear view mirror and the infotainment display. They give you like a blocked off sort of section. You look farther to the left to look into a corner and you get a massive A-pillar. And you look over your shoulder to check your blind spot and you just get either headrest or a C-pillar or B-pillar because you can't see anything out of that rear window. The good news is on the right side you actually have a little bit more room, but then again, another B-pillar. So it's a bit hard visually, but when you buy this car, you don't buy it for every day. This is a very special homologation-centered vehicle. It's not something that was or is designed to be around a long time. So I can't compare it to something like a Fiesta ST or a car like the Golf R, which it more closely compete with, because it's not a series car. It's not going to be around forever. This is quite a special vehicle. And I reckon you'll feel most special when you get up onto some gravel or maybe even some twisty bits. I often talk about what engineers do or how engineers make cars feel special. And in a car like this GR Yaris, that's exactly what it's designed to do. It has to feel special because it's homologation special. The car is specifically designed to be the basis of a rally car. And so when you get in it as a driver, you expect it to act that way. And they've done an impressive job of making this car feel lovely down to the little engine. And it's an angry little engine. It's so angry. When you get it up into the hills, into the corners, the car becomes more alive. It flows along. The suspension, which I thought may be a bit soft and a bit roly-poly, really starts to work at high speed, or higher speed, I should say. The car's placeable. The steering is fantastic. There's a good amount of feel. It's nice and direct. The all-wheel drive system, you can feel it. You can feel the all-wheel drive system and the differentials moving underneath you and moving power around and doing their job. And it's really intuitive. And you can tell that someone at Toyota finally said, we're going to make a car that's fun to drive. And here's the thing about Toyota. They generally make good A to B cars. We had the RAV recently, and I thought it was probably one of the best SUVs on the market at the moment. And I said it begrudgingly because I generally don't care for Toyotas because they're pieces of paper. Think about the Camry, for instance. They're not really designed to be anything that capture your attention. They're designed to be economical, reliable A to B vehicles. And Toyota does a really good job of creating this. But once in a while, Toyota decide we're going to actually use all this amazing automotive engineering prowess that we have, and we're going to spend a little bit of time creating something special. When you look back at all the special Toyotas that have been made, they've been cult followings. When you look back and look at what Toyota used to do on their own with their special kind of fun cars, named Celica GT4, the old Celica Sports in the US, the MR2, things like that, they were cars that you could tell someone wanted and loved to drive. And this Yaris finally feels like they've done it again. It's like once every 10 years, Toyota decides, we should probably keep the enthusiasts interested. They seem a bit bored with us at the moment. And they give you stuff like this. A great brake package, a great suspension package, a great steering package, a fantastic little engine. I mean, a firecracking little engine once you get it up and going. All this car's compromises, the lack of visibility, how small it is, how hard it is to see out of, some of the weird quirks, the interior that I don't really care for, kind of fall to the wayside when you start pushing this car to perform, because it delivers over and over and over again. And you realize that this car is special because it takes a very specific, special environment for it to do its job. But when it gets there, it does it brilliantly well. So how's the interior on the GR Yaris Rallye? Well, I have to start by saying this isn't my favorite part of the car, but then again, it's a homologation special and you're after the power and the fun over creature comforts. The seats are really quite nice and supportive. They do sit a bit high for my personal preference. I like the wheel where it's placed and it feels good in the hand. You have some analog gauges along with a digital centerpiece, which gives you some boost pressure, oil temp, that sort of thing, which is nice and handy, as well as the status of your all-wheel drive system. A heads-up display, which gives you most data that you need. Infotainment unit, Apple CarPlay to Android Auto, all through a JBL system, and it sounds quite good, though it feels a bit dated at times. Again, the view's not that great out of the car, but overall, you get your buttons for sport modes, all-wheel drive settings, heated seats, the normal Yaris items, but you don't really buy this car for comfort or carrying passengers, and there's not that much room back there to begin with. But you buy this car to enjoy the drive, and I can look past the rest of that. So how is the boot in the little Yaris? Well, like the rest of the car, it's quite tiny. There's plenty of space back here for a couple of bags or a trip to the shops, but I wouldn't be going to Bunnings and I wouldn't be putting dog crates back here either. Luckily, the seats do fold down flat, but the load floor doesn't have any storage underneath because that's where the battery is, and there's also a tire repair kit and no spare tire. What's the tops, bottoms, and final verdict on the 2021 Toyota GR Yaris Rallye? Well, on the bottom are a few things you just learn to live with a car like this. One's the fact that the interior isn't my favorite. It just feels a bit plasticky and meh for a car that's nearly 60 grand. And also visibility is not that great. So the infotainment display and the mirror are a bit clustered together, and there's big pillars, and it's just very narrow view. And it's also a World Rally homologation special, so I want just a little bit more drama. So what's on top for the little Yaris? Well, it does bring all the WRC homologation goodness to the table. It's great dynamics, fantastic steering, and a gem of a 3-cylinder engine. And the all-wheel drive system means in most any condition, as we've seen today, it's quite fun. And around town, it actually is easy to live with. It's small, easy to park, easy to get in and out of places, and rather economical being the kind of car that it is. So what's my final verdict on the 2021 GR Yaris Rallye? Well, it is a WRC homologation special, which means it's quite compromised, but it is a fantastic car overall. So if you want a rally-bred animal for the back roads, go check one out.
And it's a special thanks to Elm Park for letting us use their farm to film on this week. We wouldn't have had this much fun without them.